The Trump legal team, it has its work cut out for him this week.
Indeed. The former president's lawyers are expected to file a court motion asking for a special master to review the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago estate. The motion would seek the appointment of a neutral party to oversee and possibly return evidence collected during the agency's execution of a search warrant at the former president's Florida home earlier this month. Meanwhile, the Justice Department has until Thursday at noon to send a judge a redacted version of the affidavit warranting the search. The former president's team supports releasing the affidavit. Prosecutors say its release jeopardizes their investigation. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now for more on all this. Scott, welcome. So tell us, how significant would this type of request be from former President Trump's legal team?
Well, if and when this request comes, it's going to be significant because we're talking about an unprecedented moment in American history. Paperwork about the search of a former president's home, no matter what he argues, is going to be precedent-setting. This deadline, though, Tanya and Tony, of Thursday, 12 p.m. for the court to get filings, to get requests about this affidavit, it might all be one big mirage. There are any number of appeals that can be made by the Justice Department, by Team Trump, by the media consortium seeking the release of this affidavit. And there are so many different ways to appeal in the federal system. They could go up to a higher level judge at this Florida courthouse, could eventually go to the Court of Appeals. It all might be a shifting in time and a shifting in expectations. We may see nothing by Thursday, 12 p.m. For those of us who've covered the federal courts for some time, if you're going to bet on something, always bet there'll be an appeal, if not multiple appeals.
Yeah, it's also hard to imagine the political battle lines changing regardless of what is in this affidavit if and when it's released. I want to talk about another aspect of the unfolding drama there in Mar-a-Lago. The former president is saying that he has surveillance footage of the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago. Probably does. It's a big old club. I'm sure they've got security cameras. Is he going to release it? If he does release it, what bearing does that have on the request for the documents, or is it just all a political stunt?
Well, none of it's happening in a vacuum, Tony. It's happening in a moment where federal law enforcement officials, federal law enforcement associations, the groups that represent rank-and-file FBI agents, say they are being subjected to an increasing number of threats. Threats to their lives, threats to their safety. Our own CBS News reporting has detailed the significant increase of online chatter and targeting of potential targets in federal law enforcement. So the release of the video will raise the concerns of any different number of stakeholders in this whole episode. But I'll also note what the judge said this morning. The judge in Florida came down with a written opinion explaining what he did last week, that he's open to releasing some of this affidavit, but likely not all of it. And one of the reasons he wants some of it redacted is he says the affidavit discusses the physical aspects of Mar-a-Lago, which remains a federally secured facility, a Secret Service secured facility. There are security concerns about revealing some of the details, some of the specs of Mar-a-Lago. The release of surveillance video may do the same, revealing some of the specs and the details of Mar-a-Lago, which would be counterproductive for the Secret Service and those trying to protect that facility moving forward. So we'll see if video is released, but any number of people with any number of perspectives on this have concern about it.
Scott, I wanted to follow up on that because the release of the affidavit, that's a legal process to go through. But if the former president has his own security footage and wants to release it, is there anything that would stop him? And then the other thing that I just need to ask you about is obviously how all of this might impact the January 6th prosecutions moving forward.
Yeah, it's certainly possible somebody could go to court and try to challenge the release of surveillance video, even though it's from a private property, though it's quasi-governmental because it's Secret Service protected. But nobody's indicated they'd try to stop the Trump team from doing that ahead of the release of any footage. Let's put that aside. Impact on January 6th, there will be some. Tomorrow here in Washington, the accused seditious conspiracy defendants are going to court for a pretrial hearing. One of their defense lawyers tells me they're going to argue, or likely argue, they should delay next month's trial in that case because of the media coverage of Mar-a-Lago, the search, and the affidavit. They're going to argue it could inflame or bias jurors. They've tried that argument before with other issues in the news, like the January 6th Select Committee hearings and other January 6th prosecutions, and it hasn't worked. Doesn't mean they won't try to do that again tomorrow. But also, I'll note, any number of January 6 defendants have made the argument, or will make the argument, Tony and Tanya, that Lana, that they're being specifically targeted as political defendants, that they're politically being prosecuted. Mar-a-Lago will only fuel that further, and the coverage of Mar-a-Lago will fuel that argument more. Doesn't mean it's going to work, but they're going to try it, Lana.
All right.
All right, Scott MacFarlane, following many different strands, got a lot of balls in the air. Pick your metaphor. Our viewers didn't see it, but we saw you running to the chair, clipping your microphone on, getting the jacket on moments before air. We know you got a lot going on. We appreciate you being so steady for us, and it's good to see you as well.
Likewise.